The air in Lincoln Academy's East Wing was suffocating with entitlement. Laughter echoed off the polished marble floors, mingling with the scent of fresh pine cleaner and adolescent arrogance. Tyler Morrison, the crowned prince of privilege, lounged against his locker like he owned the school. And in many ways he did. His father, Mayor Richard Morrison, was the school's biggest donor. That morning, he wore a smug grin, flanked by his loyal shadows, Jake Sullivan and Brandon Pierce, sons of money, influence, and the belief that rules didn't apply to them. Then she arrived. Zara Williams stepped into the hallway like a shadow slicing through sunlight. 17 years old, tall, lean. Her dark skin shimmered under the fluorescence. She carried herself with the quiet grace of someone who had learned to survive silence and weaponized it. Tyler's gaze locked on her. "Well, well," he drawled, stepping directly into her path. "Look what the wind dragged into Lincoln. At least this one doesn't look like a total zoo escapee." Laughter bubbled off the crowd, nervous, not joyful. They knew this script. It always ended the same. Someone crying, someone humiliated, and the boys walking away without a scratch on their name. Zara didn't flinch. She simply stopped and met Tyler's eyes. Jake stepped closer, grinning. "What's the matter? Don't speak English? Or are you still learning to use forks instead of your fingers?" Brandon chuckled, stepping to her left. "Maybe she's used to bananas instead of apples for lunch." A sharp intake of breath swept through the onlookers. 50 students now formed a semicircle, phones out, recording. This would be the clip of the day, maybe the week. Zara's eyes didn't blink. "Excuse me," she said, her voice soft, deadly. "I need to get to class." Tyler laughed louder. "Class? Sweetheart, yours is across town, next to the bus stop." And then she smiled. Not the nervous twitch of someone about to break, not a forced expression of politeness. No, this was different. It was slight, calculated, dangerous. Some students instinctively backed up. "Interesting," she said, her head tilting just enough to make Tyler squirm. "Tyler Morrison, Jake Sullivan, Brandon Pierce." The boys froze. "How'd you know our names?" Jake snapped. Zara's eyes glittered. "Let's just say I like to know who I'm dealing with before the game begins." "What game?" Tyler barked. Zara leaned in. "The one you've already lost." Before he could reply, a voice cut through the hallway like a whip. "What's going on here?" Principal Reynolds, a tall man with graying temples and eyes that had seen enough nonsense for one career. His gaze darted between the forming crowd and the three of entitled sons standing like deer caught in the headlights. "Just welcoming the new student, sir," Tyler said smoothly, the model student mask sliding on. Reynolds looked at Zara. "Miss Williams, everything okay?" Zara gave that same unsettling smile. "Perfectly, sir. Just getting to know my classmates." Reynolds stared at her for a long second, then nodded slowly. "All right, move along, everyone." The crowd dispersed, murmuring. Phones slipped back into pockets. But Zara didn't move until the three boys stepped away. When she finally walked to her locker, her steps were even, calm, deliberate. But in her chest, a storm had awakened, and it would not be still for long. By Monday afternoon, the whispers had started. "She didn't even blink. Did you see Tyler's face? Like he saw a ghost. She smiled at him, like she knew something." Zara walked through the manicured grounds of Lincoln Academy like a ghost wrapped in dignity. She never raised her voice, she never pushed back. But her presence was unnerving, like a violin string pulled tight. No one could tell when it would snap, but they all knew it would be unforgettable. The second day, things escalated. Her math textbook was found soaked and torn in the girls' bathroom trash can. On the third day, her locker was filled with cheap bananas, each one scrawled with racial slurs. On the fourth, someone left a note. "You don't belong here, monkey. Crawl back to the zoo." Still, Zara said nothing. She came early, left late, never missed a class. And when people tried to offer comfort, curious freshmen or guilty upperclassmen, she smiled politely, thanked them, and returned to her seat. But what no one knew was that Zara wasn't passive. She was watching, recording, documenting. Hidden in her backpack was a small GoPro camera she'd clipped discreetly near her locker. Her phone was filled with time-stamped photos, the messages, the graffiti, even the voices. Tyler's laugh, Brandon's taunts, Jake's threats, all of it. It wasn't the first time she dealt with this. It just might be the last. 5 years earlier, in a different city on a different street, Zara had crouched beside her little brother as he bled into the sidewalk, kicked by boys twice his size for riding his bike on the wrong block. She was 12 then. That night, something had shifted in her chest. Rage, yes, but more than that, a promise, a quiet vow spoken only to herself in the mirror. I will never be powerless again. She began training in secret at a run-down gym in Southside Chicago. Boxing, jiu-jitsu, Muay Thai. Her hands blistered, her knuckles bruised. She trained until her arms ached and her muscles begged for rest. By 16, she was a junior state champion in both boxing and Brazilian jiu-jitsu. By 17, she earned a full athletic scholarship to Lincoln Academy, under the condition that her mother's request be honored. Don't list her as an athlete. Let her be seen as a student first. That Thursday afternoon, as Zara sat alone beneath the old oak tree behind the gym, Professor Marcus Thompson stepped out of the shadows like a chess master preparing his move. "Mind if I sit?" he asked. Zara nodded without looking. "I recognized your footwork on Monday, the way you distribute weight, your stance. You've trained years." She remained silent. "I used to coach Olympic boxing before I came here. I know a fighter's stillness when I see one." She glanced at him. He wasn't testing her. He was confirming her. "I've been patient, but you need help." Her lips parted. "The school won't act. They never do." "Because their fathers fund half the school." "Exactly." Professor Thompson exhaled. "So, we find another stage." He pulled out a folder. "Next Monday is our annual showcase for school donors and board members. This year, we're hosting a special martial arts demonstration. New talent, high stakes, all eyes watching." Zara narrowed her gaze. "You want me to fight?" "He wants you to be seen on your terms." She hesitated. "Not for revenge, but for truth, for balance." Zara leaned back against the tree and stared up at the sky. It was time. "Okay," she whispered. That weekend, the house shook with the rhythm of fists meeting leather. Zara trained in the basement like a storm trapped in a bottle. Her mother watched. By noon on Monday, the school pulsed with anticipation. Word had spread. Zara Williams was going to break. Someone in the know claimed Tyler had a plan, bigger than the bananas, crueler than the graffiti, more humiliating than the drenched textbooks. Something final. Something that would send Zara running back to wherever she came from. In the courtyard, by the flagpole, a student whispered, "They're going to film her today." In the cafeteria. He's going to make her cry in front of everyone. Bet on it. Even the teachers had noticed the tension, though none of them moved to stop it. Not when Tyler Morrison was involved, not when every administrative initiative depended on his father's donations. At 2:15 p.m., Zara sat alone on a stone bench beneath the climbing ivy wall behind the auditorium. Her history book lay open on her lap, but she wasn't reading. Nestled inside its pages, discreet and humming silently, was her phone, recording. She didn't need to bait them, they baited themselves. At the same moment, across the campus, Tyler, Jake, and Brandon stood outside the gym, going over their lines like bad actors rehearsing a cruel play. We wait until most of the school's in the courtyard. Then I call her over, make it look friendly at first, get everyone watching. Then we hit her with the speech, film her face, catch her cracking. Jake nodded, pulling out his phone. And if she walks away? We follow, Tyler grinned. She doesn't get to disappear. Not today. Brandon smirked. After this, she'll transfer by Wednesday. Bet on it. They didn't see the security camera watching from above, or the small blinking light inside Zara's locker, or the fact that Professor Thompson had been quietly collecting their audio clips all week from ambient mic recordings seeded into the gym, legal, discreet, and authorized by the school board under safety surveillance. By the time Tyler stepped into the courtyard at 2:30 p.m., his swagger was at full tilt. He glanced toward the bench. Zara was still there. Perfect. He turned to Jake and Brandon. Ready for the masterpiece? Jake raised his phone. Rolling. Tyler strode across the quad with a confidence only wealth can purchase, flanked by his hyenas. Students began to gather, some out of curiosity, some out of morbid habit. Eyes turned, phones rose, the circle began to close. He didn't realize Zara was already 4 moves ahead. Inside the gymnasium, the chairs were filling up. Board members, school investors, parents of students who donated buildings. They murmured quietly, scanning their schedules. 2:45 p.m. Demonstration, Lincoln Academy Martial Arts Program. Featuring new talent from State Champion Program. Professor Thompson adjusted the mic on the podium, smiling thinly. The board didn't know what was coming, but they were about to learn. Standing just behind the gym doors, suited in her protective gear, Zara bounced lightly on the balls of her feet. Her arms were loose, her eyes sharp. No fear, no trembling, just that same lethal calm. Her phone buzzed. From Prof. Thompson, everything in place, let them dig their own grave. She smiled. Back in the courtyard, Tyler closed in. Well, look who decided to crawl out from under her rock. Zara looked up, her face serene, unreadable. You don't quit, do you? She asked. No, Tyler said, but you will. He motioned to Jake. The phone zoomed in. I just thought it was time you understood something, Tyler continued, his voice rising so the crowd could hear. Lincoln Academy isn't the kind of place for charity cases. A few gasps, a few laughs. Zara closed her book, slowly, gently. Done? Not quite, Tyler sneered. See, people like me, we built this place. We fund this place. You think you belong here because of your little pity scholarship? You're a guest, a temporary inconvenience. Jake panned. The gymnasium was chaos. Board members muttered in disbelief. Phones rang in the hands of scandalized donors. Teachers looked at each other like they'd just woken from a long, shameful sleep. But at the center of it all stood Zara, calm as moonlight over a battlefield. Principal Reynolds approached the microphone. His hands shook as he adjusted it.
"Miss Williams," he began, "the school administration will—" But Professor Thompson stepped forward, his voice cutting through the tension like tempered steel. "This is not the time for excuses," he said. "This is the time for truth." He turned to face the crowd. "You have all just witnessed the kind of strength we say we want in our students: grace under fire, integrity in the face of hatred. And now we must show whether we have the same strength to act." Mayor Morrison stood, face pale as limestone. "Tyler, what is this?" he barked. "Dad, Tyler tried to explain, but the words came out hollow, pointless. "There is no explanation. Not for this. Not for you," he growled. He turned to Principal Reynolds. "I expect immediate action." Reynolds nodded solemnly. "Mr. Morrison, Mr. Sullivan, Mr. Pierce, you are suspended indefinitely pending full investigation, and I am contacting law enforcement regarding hate crimes committed on school property." Jake dropped his phone. Brandon looked as though he might be sick. Tyler tried to speak, but his father had already turned away, too disgusted to look at him. And as Zara quietly stepped down from the stage, students parted like waves. Not out of fear, but out of awe. She had come into the lion's den and walked out holding its jawbone. The fallout was nuclear. The video of the presentation hit social media within minutes. By nightfall, it had gone viral. Black teen exposes bullies at elite school with receipts. The girl who brought Lincoln Academy to its knees. Hashtag Zara Williams. Hashtag Truth is Power. Hashtag Justice in Motion. Tyler's racist slurs, Brandon's threats, Jake's smug laughter. It all played on loop across TikTok, Instagram, even the local news. Within a week, Mayor Morrison lost his re-election campaign by a landslide. Jake's family dealership was hit with mass boycotts and closed within 3 months. Brandon's family law firm collapsed under public pressure after clients dropped them overnight. His parents filed for divorce, citing irreconcilable disgrace. The school board replaced half its members. Mandatory anti-discrimination training was implemented. Lincoln Academy, once known for privilege and silence, was now being studied as a national model for institutional transformation. But for Zara, the real victory was quieter. 6 months later, she stood before the school as student council president and captain of the martial arts team. Her self-defense classes had grown to over 200 students, both girls and boys. She taught techniques, yes, but more than that, she taught dignity. "Never fight for revenge," she told her students. "Fight to protect your truth." Even Madison, a shy freshman who had once trembled under locker room insults, now walked with confidence after 3 months under Zara's mentorship. "You helped me find my voice," Madison whispered one afternoon. "No," Zara smiled, adjusting the girl's stance. "You always had it. I just helped you hear it." Professor Thompson watched from the doorway. His chest swelled with pride. "She's done more in half a year than I could in 15, he said to Principal Reynolds. Reynolds nodded solemnly. "And to think we almost let 3 boys erase that potential." But even justice has its haunting echoes. One gray April afternoon, after the rain had softened the edges of the world, a familiar car pulled into the staff parking lot. It was no longer the polished city-issued BMW, just a used sedan now. Inside it sat Mayor Morrison, no longer the mayor. The day of graduation came beneath a sky so blue it felt like redemption. The auditorium of Lincoln Academy, once a chamber of whispers and judgment, now stood dressed in banners that read, "Strength in Truth" and "We Rise Together." Parents, educators, board members, and media representatives packed the rows. At center stage stood a podium, waiting for the voice of a girl who had, through silence, composure, and fire, reshaped the soul of an entire institution. Zara Williams adjusted her gown and walked calmly through the hallway backstage. The whispers had changed. "She's the one who changed everything. Do you think she'll go into law, civil rights? I heard she got offers from Stanford, Columbia, and Harvard. She's a legend." But Zara wasn't thinking of universities, not yet. She was thinking about her brother, the one who had bled on a cracked sidewalk 5 years earlier and had whispered through tears, "Why do they hate us?" She was thinking of the note they'd stuffed in her locker that read, "Go back to Africa." The spray paint, the bruised knuckles wrapped in silence, the fear she'd refused to wear. She was thinking of every girl who'd been told she was too loud, too dark, too strong, too different. Today wasn't just her victory. It was theirs. Principal Reynolds stood at the mic. "Each year, we choose one student to represent the graduating class. This year, that decision was unanimous." He looked out across the sea of faces. "Ladies and gentlemen, your valedictorian, Zara Williams." The applause was deafening. Zara stepped onto the stage, her gown swaying, her hands steady. She took a long breath, and then she began. "A year and a half ago, I arrived here like a shadow, hoping not to be seen. I thought that if I walked quietly enough, smiled politely enough, and took up as little space as possible, I would survive." She looked up. But I was wrong. Because injustice does not care how quietly you walk. It will find you anyway. And when it does, you have a choice. You can disappear, or you can stand. The room fell utterly silent. I chose to stand, not because I wasn't afraid, but because I knew that someone had to remind this place and this world what real strength looks like. And it doesn't look like fists or fear. It looks like truth. She paused, eyes scanning the crowd until they landed on Professor Thompson. "When I stood in that gym, I wasn't just fighting for myself. I was fighting for every student who's ever felt too small to matter, for every voice drowned out by wealth, for every girl who's been told she's too much or not enough. This is what strength looks like. Not revenge, not silence, not violence, but clarity, dignity, and the unshakable belief that we belong." Her voice softened. "True victory isn't about destroying the people who hurt us. It's about building something so powerful they can never hurt us again." Thunderous applause rose like a tidal wave. People stood. Some cried, others shouted her name. Even in the very back of the hall, a tall man in a plain black suit wiped his eyes. Tyler Morrison. Beside him, his father clapped, not out of duty, but out of reverence. After the ceremony, Zara was approached by university reps with full scholarship offers. Harvard, Columbia, Yale. But she already knew where she was going. Harvard Law. She had a vision. Civil rights litigation, policy reform, giving voice to the voiceless. Professor Thompson caught her by the arm as she stepped off the stage. "You have no idea," he said softly, "how many lives you've just changed." Zara smiled. "Neither did they." He chuckled. "Do you know what your greatest win was?" 2 years later, the world had changed, but not as much as she had. Harvard Law was brutal, competitive, unforgiving, but so was Zara. In the heart of Cambridge, in lecture halls older than the Declaration of Independence, she sat front row, always. She asked questions no one else dared. She didn't raise her hand timidly. She raised it like a flag of defiance, carved by experience. She wasn't there to be tolerated. She was there to transform. Her professors took notice. So did the students. But it wasn't the sharpness of her mind that captivated them most. It was the way she carried herself, like someone who had already been through fire and now carried fire within her. Zara didn't walk. She moved like purpose, wrapped in skin. One afternoon, during a constitutional law seminar, the professor posed a question on civil liberties and precedent. While the room shifted uncomfortably, Zara stood. Her answer wasn't an answer, it was a lesson. The law is only a shield if everyone gets to hold it. Otherwise, it's a blade disguised as fairness. The room went still. And that was the day they stopped underestimating her. By her second year, she had interned with 2 civil rights firms, helped draft legislation on school discrimination, and testified before a congressional subcommittee on racial bias in elite educational institutions. Her story, the Lincoln Academy story, had become required reading in ethics classes across the country. She didn't seek fame, but she had become a symbol, not of revenge, but of resistance refined into justice. And then one spring evening, just after dusk, she received a letter, handwritten, from a return address she hadn't seen in years, Pierce and Sons Law, defunct. Inside a single note, Zara, I never got the chance to say it when it mattered. Maybe I didn't even understand it then. But I see now. What we did was evil, and you were everything we pretended not to see. I don't expect forgiveness, but I wanted you to know that I remember, and I'm trying to be someone my future kids wouldn't be ashamed of. By Brandon. Zara stared at the words for a long time, then folded them and burned them, not out of anger, but because she no longer needed them. Back at Lincoln Academy, a new statue stood in the courtyard, a bronze silhouette of a girl standing tall, notebook in one hand, fist relaxed at her side. The plaque read, Zara Williams, strength in stillness, power in truth. She never requested the statue, but she never visited without placing a flower beneath it. Each time she whispered the same thing, keep standing. Someone needs you to. Years later, Zara would become one of the youngest civil rights attorneys in the country to argue before the Supreme Court. And she would win, not with rage, not with vengeance, but with the same quiet storm she had once brought into a high school hallway where cruelty had thrived. A reporter once asked her, if you could go back to that first day at Lincoln Academy, when Tyler Morrison blocked your path and insulted you, what would you say now? Zara paused, then smiled. Nothing. I already said everything that needed saying. I just hadn't said it yet.